Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are and whatever time you see this video. So today we have a special guest, State Senator Jim Ranstad with us. He is a committee member of the State Finance Committee and the Senate Family Chairman and Senior and Veterans Committee, and is also a member of Judiciary and Public Safety Committee, and is also a member of Education and Career Readiness Committee. He's also another member of another committee called Appropriations Committee. So welcome to the show, Senator Jim Ranstad.
Thank you so much. I'm very proud to be on the show.
So welcome and thank you very much for giving us your time and trying to share your views with us. So can you talk a little bit about yourself, your background, how you started your career and how you got into the politics and how you got into the Senate, please, State Senate, please?
Sure. I was raised on a family farm out in Goodrich. It's in Genesee County, about 30 minutes from where I live in White Lake. And it was a wonderful childhood. We raised all kinds of farm animals and farm products and maple syrup. And then I decided I wanted to become a school teacher. My mother and father were both school teachers, and then my dad became a principal for a while. And so I went to school, got a bachelor's degree in education, and was going to become a school teacher, but there was unfortunately no jobs back at that time, no openings. So I went into the insurance industry, and then been primarily in the insurance industry throughout my career. And I have started my own business back in 2000, and did the insurance job all the way up till I was elected to the state house in 2014. Prior to that, I became involved with grassroots activism. I worked to reform family law before I was ever in office, and then ran for the county commission back in 2008. I won that, served 6 years there, and served on every committee, chaired 2 committees while I was there, and then was elected to the state house, as I said, in 2014. And had a lot of success in that position in terms of getting some pretty good legislation through. One piece I'm particularly proud of is video cameras for police officers. If they wear a camera, what do they have to disclose, not disclose, all of these types of things. We got passed a piece of model legislation back when I was in the House. In 2018, I ran for the Michigan Senate, and I won that position. It's a 4-year term, and I'm a little over halfway through that 4-year term. And again, having a lot of fun and a lot of success in this position.
Very nice to hear about your career and the path to the Senate. And you looks like on your way in this journey, you're touched by many people from all walks of life, like teachers or the insurance industry and many other industry people. So that gave you very good experience in serving them as a politician and also governance from the governance point of view. So today, the whole world is facing COVID-19 pandemic. And at the same time, we have the coronavirus is spreading. And Michigan is one of the states, where we have more number of cases and also more deaths of the seniors and other people. So can you talk about, how Michigan as a state has handled the COVID-19 pandemic situation from the beginning, like let it be in February and through now, please?
I would say the initial response, I think, could have been handled better. And that revolves around the primary elections, the presidential primary elections. And in Ohio, they shut down all of the big meetings because the pandemic was spreading already in the nation. Michigan permitted those big meetings. Bernie Sanders had 10,000 people compressed into a very small spot in Ann Arbor. Joe Biden had a meeting of 6,000, another with 5,000. This was all right after Ohio had shut all these down. We had those, and we were tracking people, so we don't know how much of an impact that had, but it had potentially a pretty big impact. Also, China was stopping domestic flights, but they were permitting international flights. So China felt that there was an issue, the Chinese government, that they didn't want to have a spread by having domestic flights, yet they were permitting them to come to the United States. And Metro Detroit has a hub that received Chinese flights. So I would say it was a combination of those two things at the beginning. After that, I think Michigan did a pretty good job. I think we shut down things that had to be shut down. I felt as time went on that we could have parsed it out a little bit better. The concerns I had were things that were deemed essential and non-essential that simply didn't seem to make sense. For instance, the executive order that said that you can go out and get, recreational marijuana, alcohol, lottery tickets, but you can't go get, wood chips or paint, things like that. Didn't make sense. To say that you can go get gas for your lawnmower so that 10 people can go get gas, fill up their lawnmowers and mow their lawn, but one person with one gas tank couldn't fill it up and then mow the 10 lawns, didn't seem to make sense. So some of those things with time got changed, and I was pleased to see that they were changed so that we're getting more of a realistic approach in terms of tracking, or is there a return of the virus, and what do we need to do logically to prevent that? We just had a bar down in Lansing that all these students were congregating in there, and I heard reports of 70 people getting the virus from that congregating. So there's still some parsing out, some issues that have to be dealt with. I think we're doing a much better job now in terms of making sure that the essential and the safe are being looked at, with the exception of there's still problems in our nursing homes. The biggest problem we have had in terms of handling this virus has been in the Michigan nursing homes. And an example of that is contrasting how Florida handled their nursing homes and Michigan handled the nursing homes. The policy in Michigan was that we would have these regional hubs, and it would be a nursing home that had a less than 80% capacity, was required to participate in these hubs or create a hub. And they would send COVID patients into these nursing homes. But the nursing homes had non-COVID patients in them, and they would bring in the infected patients in, and thus began what everyone agrees is a spread of the disease. And Florida, they had a policy that they took underutilized or closed nursing homes, they opened them up for COVID-only patients. And their patients would be sent, that had COVID, would be sent to these facilities. And the numbers kind of tell the difference. In Florida, they have about 10 million people. We have about 10 million people. But they have an older population. They have about 150,000 patients. Michigan has about 38,000. However, the last statistics I saw, we had over 2,000 deaths. They had around 1,800 deaths. So they have approximately 4 times as many individuals in the nursing home, but less deaths than we had because of this policy. So this last week, we passed a bill requiring that Michigan set up units that are COVID-only units so that we aren't putting in infected patients with non-affected patients.
Got it. Thank you very much for your views on the COVID-19 handling in Michigan. At the same time, you brought in a point, which says, our governor has handled it a little differently, but you're pleased with the way right now we are handling it. See, but if you look at in the world, I mean, the people, I mean, who have locked down, I mean, or put the stay home orders earlier, let it be New Zealand, or let it be Taiwan, or let it be any other countries. I mean, they have seen more success in controlling the COVID-19. So, do you think? I mean, is she? I mean, we don't you think she is in line with those steps what the other countries or other heads of the states that they have done to control the COVID-19?
It really depends. You hear a lot of different statistics. South Dakota never locked down. Sweden never locked down, and apparently didn't have nearly the problems that other states did. But Michigan's its own state, and I think early on, I thought the governor's approach was correct after the initial decision to allow the congregating for the primaries. I thought that was a bad decision, but after that, I thought she handled it pretty well until I think there needed to be some more refinement of the policies, and the legislature wanted to be involved with the refinement of the policies, and we were prohibited, and that's now in the courts whether one individual is going forward for all time be able to make these types of decisions and without any time frame. In other words, in the future, if a governor declares a state of emergency, can they have unlimited power with no oversight and have it for the entire term? Those are the kinds of questions we're trying to get figured out in the court system, because in our view, you need to have some check and balance. It shouldn't be just one individual making these decisions. We could have somebody in the future that maybe is not making responsible decisions, and without any check or balance, everyone would just have to live with those indefinitely. So that's all being adjudicated now in the court system.
Thank you very much, sir. So, I mean, you already touched this particular topic about seniors in Michigan, but recently Senate has passed a bill about how to handle the senior livings. So, can you talk a little more about the bill the Senate has passed recently? I think 2 or 3 days back, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, as I described earlier, it's been a horrific scenario in Michigan, where we have had COVID patients put in with the non-COVID patients. There was a video that maybe you have seen, it went national, that had a 20-year-old patient who had COVID, and they put that individual who also had mental health issues in with the healthy patients, and that patient physically beat an elderly man on video. And apparently he did this to 2 individuals, and the reason he was there was because he had COVID, this 20-year-old individual. And that's just an example of stories that I have heard that are just heartbreaking stories coming out of nursing homes. The families have been in a panic because not only are they aware that Michigan is putting in the COVID patients with the non-COVID, the family members and loved ones can't go in and see their loved one. They're prohibited by the executive order. And I talked with a lady a few days ago that said she was talking with her father on the phone, and he dropped the phone because he was so weak. She went to the nursing home and was not allowed in. She started literally trying to break the door down. They let her in. She ran to her father's room, and she said he was emaciated. He hadn't ate or drank in days. She gave him cup after cup after cup of water for him to drink, and he had fallen out of bed and broke all his teeth out in the front, and hadn't been rendered assistance. Was in excruciating pain because of his illness, and was not giving anything but a Tylenol. And she said she had promised her dad that nothing like this would happen. She would take care of him, and she said he died the next day, and that there's nothing she can do for her dad, but she really wants these policies reformed in the nursing home, and she also wants the bill I have to permit video camera monitoring in the rooms if the family wants to put them in. So our bill says you have to create a special unit that is COVID only, a special facility, so you're not putting the infected patients in with the non-infected patients and spreading the disease. Unfortunately, that's what was happening with Michigan, and we're working to make sure that does not happen going forward.
Thank you very much, Senator. We also have another guest with us, Sunny Reddy. Yes, so do you have any points or questions to Senator Jim Ranstad, please?
Actually, I just wanted to add on to what Senator Jim said. Senator Ranstad said is the implementing the lockdown, the shutdown, the governor's executive order, because it was too late. Everybody knows that it's done because of the primaries. That's affected a lot. Definitely adds. On top of that, there is a protest. I don't know how she handled it, but protests also affected COVID situation.
Your voice is not clear, Sunny Reddy. You are breaking up.
Breaking up?
Yeah, right now it's like better. I think if you lean forward, probably it's catching. I don't know what's happening. Yes.
Okay. So
it's better now. Yeah, please repeat if you don't mind.
Okay. Two things I would like to add on what Senator Ranstad said. The first thing is the executive order. It was too late. I know it's happened because of the Democratic primaries. They delayed. They want to have the Democratic primaries, whereas other states such as Ohio implemented early stage, and they are in better position. The second thing is the protest. I don't think she handled properly. That contributed many cases also, even though it's happened in the later part. But you can see the fluctuations. So those two things. And then I would like to ask Senator one question. Disband the police department. In my feeling, in my experience, every officer, police officer, they put their lives online every day. They don't know whether they're going to go back home or not when they start their job in the morning. So these kind of sacrifices they are doing, I strongly feel they are not treated well. I do understand there could be a bad cop here and there, but disbanding the police department is not the right solution. They deserve the respect. What do you think, Senator?
I absolutely agree with you. I was just listening to a report before I came on your show of a police officer who stopped on a roadside to render assistance to a man who appeared to be in distress on the side of the road. And the officer went up to help him, and the man on the side of the road shot and killed the officer. Another where a couple of officers were sitting in their car having a discussion, and somebody came up and killed them both. If this is the kind of thing that this country is going to permit, they simply will have no one go into law enforcement. And what happens when you have no law enforcement is you have anarchy. The criminals begin to just rule the streets. I was watching another video again today where a bunch of individuals hooked up a truck to the front of a gun store that had all the security, big steel gates. They pulled it all down. They ran in. They started smashing all of the glass cases and pulling handguns out, loading. There's about 12 guys grabbing AR-15s, stealing all the guns, loading them into the truck, all very fast. So now we have, in that one raid, there's dozens, maybe 100 guns that are now on the streets because the police are being told to stand down, being told to abandon precincts. We're going to have anarchy the way this is going. This, to me, makes no sense that an elected official would put the lives of the citizens in jeopardy for a very small percent of individuals who are there for their own purposes. protesting in a nonviolent way is the American thing to do. I mean, it's protected rights. We ought to be expressing ourselves, but violence and having no police to protect innocent victims who, in some of these cases, are beaten, raped, killed in some of these autonomous zones. It's something that I don't believe the majority of Americans would support.
Got it. Thank you very much for your reviews on this particular topic, especially when the police department or police officers are risking their lives and protecting us. Yeah, I know there are a few cases where they have been not acting properly, and that's where probably people are also talking about qualified immunity. I mean, bringing some accountability to the police department and also make some reforms. I heard there is some bill in the Michigan legislature about police reforms. Can you talk about that one, Senator, please?
There was a bill that we did pass out of the Senate. I believe it was unanimous, and it talked about training, a lot of additional training, a lot of tracking of stops and procedures. So there was a very positive package that we felt was going to make a big difference in making sure that if there are departments or individuals who are doing the wrong thing, that we're going to be able to weed them out. And that went through the Senate unanimous about 2 to 3 weeks ago. So we are doing our part to make sure that the bad apples are weeded out of the process, and that is what should be happening. Also, if there's particular individuals who are doing the wrong thing, let's go after them. But this idea that we're going to remove all police and let the criminals run the streets, I don't see anybody but the very small sliver of the population who think that that's a good idea.
Gotcha. Thank you. So, Sunny Reddy, do you have any points to add?
Yeah,
Question? Yeah, please go
I
ahead.
would like to add something. I understand there are reforms coming for the police department, but also I strongly feel in the past also there is a protest, there is a looters. And in President Obama time also there was a looting going on. We did not give a strong message to this. What are we going to do? These small businesses, they're killing the small businesses. Looting is not part of the
It's a tragedy. These small businesses in the United States are being decimated, absolutely destroyed. Number one, by the COVID virus that shut them down. And many of them are not going to survive. And these are individuals who poured their heart, their soul, their lives, sometimes generations of pouring everything they had into this business. And they can lose it for no fault of their own because of this coronavirus. On top of that, in these areas of violence, and it happened in Lansing. I saw a video of protesters going down and smashing all the windows in the buildings. Many of them are still boarded up in Lansing. This kind of activity absolutely should be prohibited. Businesses in these areas that are losing everything, they're barely hanging on, and then we have protesters breaking in and stealing everything that they have, and absolutely making these fine business owners destitute to have nothing for the rest of their lives because they have absolutely lost everything. I don't see how anyone can support this. Yet there are politicians in this state, in this country, who say, well, we just got to let them have their way, and we don't want to interfere with looting and violence. I couldn't disagree more. We have to regain control of security here in the state of Michigan and nationally. If we don't, we're going to have an anarchy like we have never seen in this nation's history.
Thank you very much, Senator. Go ahead, Sonia Reddy, please.
One thing I would like to add it. I just want to know that if you don't we're not sending the right message for future generations. I think we should send him a strong message. And by that way, it won't happen.
Yeah, thank you very much for your views. So are you expecting a response from Senator? I don't think so, right? I mean, you expressed your views. Thank you very much, Sunny Reddy. Yeah, for your views. Moving on, go ahead. Senator, do you want to say anything about this?
It kind of broke up on me, but it sounded like Sonny was saying that we need to set an example for future generations.
Message, yeah.
Absolutely. I am just amazed what must be going on in parts of the education system to persuade young people that this is a proper response, that violence is a proper response, that attacking people who have a different view than you is a proper response. We're coming up on the 4th of July weekend, and every 4th of July, I think about my uncles and my father who all fought in World War II. And they fought for our Constitution. They fought for freedom. They were fighting against fascism. They were fighting for free speech. And I hear now that if you disagree with some of these protesters, they have the right to violently, physically assault you because you have a different view. And that was not what this country was all about. That is not what my father and my uncles fought for in war to protect. They fought to protect our way of life, our Constitution, our liberties, and all of that seems to be under assault by many in the country who believe these things should be removed. And I couldn't disagree more. I think that that's what makes the United States an exceptional nation, is the liberties, is the freedom.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for your review. So we moving on to another topic. I mean, related to the same, similar. So you mentioned that, I mean, the small businesses are getting hurt during this COVID-19, even in spite of before even COVID-19 also. See, Michigan, if you look at the census, Michigan is not attracting many new citizens, I mean, from other states. I mean, mostly Michigan is increasing the population by the immigrants and also the people newborn within the Michigan. They're staying here and then growing. So with this, the economy is not, I mean, local economy is not growing much. So, I mean, what the kind of jobs we have are very limited. So is there anything which I know it's not your, I mean, role or your position to look at those things, but do you as a legislator, do you see any path leading towards improving the economy, or I mean, in the future? And also on top of it, right now we have this COVID-19 pandemic, which is also hurting the businesses locally. So is there anything which in the legislation do you see going forward, any help to improve the economy locally and also jobs locally?
Well, I think there's going to be potentially the biggest difficult financial situation that we have faced in many years going forward. We're looking at a budget deficit this year of $3 billion, over $3 billion, and over $3 billion next year. So on a general fund, which is where we have discretion, is about $10 billion. So you're looking about 30% this year and 30% next year, potentially having to be removed out of the budget. So it's going to be a very difficult appropriations process that we're going to have to go through. But we have to make sure in every way we can help our small businesses. And like I said, I was frustrated that some of these policies that impacted negatively small businesses that I think could have been done completely safely, they were closed down, and now they're hanging on barely. So wherever possible that we can safely open up, we have to open up. If we can also look at anything additional that can be done with federal COVID dollars, my preference is that we help the small businesses. Too much of the money from the federal dollars were directed to the big players, and many of the smaller players didn't have either the relationships with banks or they didn't have the ability to process the paperwork. And small business is about 80% of all the jobs. So we should be focusing on how can we help these small businesses and not as much the big businesses. Many of the big businesses that had bonds, corporate paper, some of it junk bonds that was worth maybe 20, 30 cents on the dollar, the federal government rode to the rescue and gave them 100 cents on the dollar. So a lot of the big players have been well taken care of by Congress, and the small businesses, which are the bread and butter of employment, did not get a fair shake in the way this was put together. So I'm going to advocate on federally with our federal representatives to start making sure that the small businesses get more care. And then as chair of finance committee, I know there was a lot of proposals to really put tax burden, increased tax burden on the small business, and I will absolutely oppose that.
Good. Thank you very much. Coming back to another topic here, I mean, we have been talking about the COVID and also the police reforms. At the same time, we have a Black Lives Matter movement going on. So what is your opinion and take on the Black Lives movement in the US and also in Michigan?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, it is the American way to protest, to make your voice heard, to assemble, and those are all positive things. What is not acceptable is any participation in violence, looting, burning down buildings, assaulting people. These things are things that I don't care what group it is, should not be permitted to behave that way. So if there are individuals like Black Lives Matter or other groups are out there making their concerns known, expressing their view, marching, they should do it in a socially responsible way, socially distanced, wear masks. I saw the governor with a big protest group probably 2 weeks after she was saying that a protest against her was very dangerous and was terribly done. A few weeks later, I saw her with a mass protest where many were not social distancing, many did not have masks on. So I think there just has to be a consistent policy to make sure that we're all following the same understanding of what needs to be done when you are together in these kind of groups.
Gotcha. I know. I mean, this is a political environment. I mean, where each party will be blaming the other people for their own actions. I mean, at the national level, there's a little different, and here they're a little different. But yeah, we understand it is better at the end of the day. It's your life, and you have to be safe and maintain the social distancing and wearing the mask. And now the rest is up to the individual. So I will leave the topic right there, and then we go on to something else. Sunny Reddy, do you want to add anything to this?
I think we pretty well covered. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sunny.
Just want to say, not only the Black lives, every life is a matter. I feel, just not just the Black lives. I do understand the concerns, and I agree with Senator Runstead that violence is not the solution. You have a right to protest peacefully, and you protest, and that's how I.
Thank you very much for your views, Senator. Have you introduced any new bills into the in the Senate, and do you want to talk about any of those bills which you have introduced? I heard especially on the ballot proposal. So, do you want to talk about it, please?
Yes, there's two that I think I'm really proud of in this environment that I was able to have some success with. One is a nursing home bill that requires nursing homes to allow a family to put a camera in to monitor their loved one. And what we found in watching literally hundreds and hundreds of videos online of some of the most horrific abuse you can imagine. Most people probably could not watch 2 or 3 of these, and then they simply have to stop. The abuse is absolutely horrific. And these are recordings that were either from the 5 states that allow a video camera to put in, or the families just put the film in illegally, The problem with that is that it's often not permissible in a court of law. Even if you capture a person violently abusing another person, it was an illegal taping. So this bill says that the family members, if they choose and if their loved one wants to have a camera put in, they can put the camera in, provided they got permission from anyone else in the room, and they have to post that the camera is running. The facility itself can close the curtain so that they can do private procedures, so that it won't be a privacy issue. This is overwhelmingly supported by almost every single senior citizen I have spoke with, because they don't like the idea of being vulnerable, helpless in a situation where their loved ones can't have access to them. That passed unanimously out of the Health Policy Committee. We're working on a few tweaks, and then it should be passed off the Senate floor. The other bill that I'm very excited about, or it's actually a resolution, that would be a constitutional change. These are very unusual. We can't remember when the last time a constitutional change proposal came out of the legislature, but good news is that this is a bipartisan resolution. It passed 100% out of the 110 House members, 100% out of the 38 Senate members, and it will be going to the ballot this November. And what this bill says is that law enforcement has to have a warrant to come in and look at your electronic data and communications. So to look at your phone, to look at your computer, or any of your electrical devices, they can't willy-nilly come in and start rifling through your information. They have to have a warrant. And there was a lot of abuses in Michigan and nationally that were occurring. And two other states, Missouri and New Hampshire, have both passed the same language. Missouri passed with 75% vote of the people, New Hampshire with 82% vote of the people. So it's coming up this November. All of your viewers will have an opportunity to vote for it. And I believe it will probably be voted 80% plus vote of the people in November.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for the information on the new bills you have passed. One, you're on the Education and the Career Readiness Committee. So, I mean, Michigan is one of the, in the bottom list of the school, I mean, performance, from the performance point of view, one of the from the bottom states in the list. So what is it that, I mean, we are missing, and why is the need measures to improve performance of our schools? Some people are they say that, I mean, we need to remove the education. Libertarians, they say that, I mean, we need to remove the education department and give the control to the parents, I mean, and the teachers to improve the education system. So what do you have, I mean, what are your views on our current education system, being your parents, both parents being teachers, and you have first-hand information about the teaching, and also your kids on whom you're seen them studying in the schools. So I really appreciate your views on this particular topic, please.
Sure. There's a couple of things. One that is particularly disheartening is that Michigan is known in the nation as the worst state for dyslexic students. Dyslexia is a processing issue, and makes it very difficult to learn to read and to learn to read effectively. Up to 20% of students have dyslexia. So it's a huge problem. And if the child doesn't learn to read early on, it becomes hopeless as they get older. I've talked to so many individuals who have been to other states and came here and told me their experience with their dyslexic child. They were tested in first grade. There was intensive help to help them get to read and up to the standards. In Michigan, there's virtually nothing, almost nothing in testing, and there's almost nothing in help. And this is something I'm working with Democrat colleague, Senator Jeff Irwin, and I are working on a bill package to get this problem fixed. We're hoping that there could be some federal funding help associated with this at this point. So we're going as fast as we can to try to put together a package that is going to be meaningful and really make a difference for these students. I think that because we are the worst in the nation on dyslexia and up to 20% of the students are affected, that alone would drive us into the bottom of the pack, not only on reading, but all kinds of other test scores associated with reading. So that's going to be a major push. I also am concerned that with the new social studies standards, I heard some of the debate associated with that, and there was comments made by some of the individuals who are making these changes that the United States is not a republic. Every document you look at from the Founding Fathers talks about the United States being a republic. Now, how that can be thrown out is beyond me, and just different individuals who get left out of history because of decisions that are made by members of the State Board of Education. So I would like to have some more input there in terms of what some of the standards are. I would really like us to make a difference on helping these students with dyslexia. Instead of being at the bottom, I would like for us to be at the top. So this is going to be a major push for myself and Senator Irwin going forward this session.
So very nice. You have mentioned about the steps you guys are trying to take to improve the education system. But what I also heard that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, some of the funds which have been allocated for the education system always, I mean, often, I mean, will be diverted to our infrastructure, which is the roads. Is there anything? Is there any truth in it, or is there anything which, because when I talk to some of the other party candidates, they say both the houses are controlled by the Republicans, so they are the one who has to take the voting. I mean, so they have to approve the bills. Sometimes, I mean, we get less funding for the education system. I'm not trying to blame or make it a war between two parties, but is there a challenge in giving enough funds to the education system in Michigan?
Diverting from education to the roads is not the concern I've heard as much as the much bigger concern, and that is diverting money to higher ed. Before, all of the money was going directly to the K through 12, and then there was a diversion of a part of that education funding to universities. I have opposed that. Every year that I have been in office, I've spoke on this extensively, that I do not believe we should be diverting the K-12 money from the local schools off to the universities. So that's something I will continue to fight. And some of these universities have very big endowments. I can't remember what U of M's was, but it was in the billions. And why we have schools that are struggling, K-12 schools, and we have universities that have big endowments, that's not a proper shifting of the dollars in my view.
Thank you very much for your views. I mean, I know we have many other topics, but due to the constraint of the time, I would like to limit here. Sunny Reddy, do you have any points to ask or any questions to ask?
I am okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Senator Jim, I mean, thank you very much. Do you want to say any message to our audience, our listeners, or your constituents, or your citizens of the Michigan, please? Senator, hello. I think it's frozen, or looks like his net connection is a problem with the senator. Many things. It was very nice of him to share a lot of his views. So, Senator Jim, are you there? Looks like we lost him. Thank you very much for your time, Senator Jim Ranstad and Sunny Reddy. Thanks for coming on the show and sharing your views. Have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.